Hi, I'm Thomas Kopache. You may remember me from my appearances on Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. And you're listening to Trek Untold.
Hello and welcome back to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I am your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. And welcome back to the podcast, and more importantly, welcome to the kickoff of Season 3, because this is episode 101. Not to be confused with that TNG episode that had the binars in it. That's a whole different thing. We're still quite a few digits away from that number. But anyway, if you like obscure references like that, you're going to be in for a treat on this season. My focus during my time away has been not just improving some elements of this show that I wanted to adjust, but also hunting down some truly elusive guests. When I say I have some deep cuts coming to the show, I really mean it. This season, I've made it my mission to find contributors of the Star Trek universe who haven't done a lot of interviews and whose stories are truly untold. And I have to tell you guys, I was able to find some real gems, including some folks who have never talked about their Star Trek experiences, and some who, quite honestly, haven't really done many interviews at all. This isn't just shining a spotlight on these well-deserving folks. This has been an excavation mission to uncover stories that no one has heard before, with people from around the world. For real, you are going to be shocked to see some of the guests I have in the coming months, so you are not going to want to miss a single episode. Now, as for the kickoff to this season, well, I'm very excited to tell you about our first guest. This actor is one of a short list of performers to appear in all 4 of the Berman-era Star Trek shows, as well as one of the movies. And that man is Thomas Kopache. Thomas has appeared in TNG as a Romulan named Mirok in the episode The Next Phase, and as a train engineer in the episode Emergence, followed by a role as a comm officer aboard the Enterprise B in Star Trek Generations. After that, he headed to Voyager to play Viorsa in the infamous episode The Thaw, and next did 2 appearances on DS9 as Kira Tabin, the father of Kira Nerys. Finally, Thomas showed up twice on Enterprise, first in the pilot episode as a Vulcan in the opening of the show, Broken Bow, and then later on in the series in the episode Harbinger as the phasing sphere builder test subject. But Thomas's career goes far beyond that, with roles in LA Law, Roseanne, As the World Turns, The X-Files, Murder 1, Bones, The Practice, and one of his most notable roles as Secretary of State Bob Slattery in The West Wing, which we're going to talk about today. Thomas has also spent a lot of time in the theater world, including a discussion on a show that just recently finished up here in New York City. Thomas is an actor's actor, but not just that, he is also a Trekkie, tried and true. You're going to be amazed at the insight he gives on so many of his roles today, and especially the love and respect he has had for his multiple roles on Star Trek. So get ready to enjoy a very special conversation with an amazing performer and a great human being, Thomas Kopache. But before we begin this week's episode, I want to remind you to follow Trek Untold on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Trek Untold, all one word. You can get show updates, check out some fun memes, and let me know what you think about what's going on with the current events in the Star Trek universe. You can also support this show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/TrekUntold, where you can support this show for as little as $2 a month. At higher tiers, you can listen to the shows before they come out, know about my guests well in advance, and even have a chance to ask them questions, get transcripts of these episodes to make sure you get all the info, and more benefits coming soon, including watch parties and live streams. But that's all dependent on more fans like you coming over and letting me know you want to be a part of events like that. If you want some Trek Untold merchandise, check out our store for gear and apparel, including shirts, hats, stickers, water bottles, notebooks, and a whole lot more. New designs will be added throughout the year, so it's always worth taking a peek. Trek Untold also has an Amazon shop where you can peruse everything Star Trek, sci-fi, and geeky on Amazon in one convenient location. If you're looking for a gift for the Trekkie in your life, or maybe want to see some of my favorite non-Star Trek things that you can get for yourself, check out the link for my Amazon shop in the show notes on the audio version and in the description below this video on YouTube. If you're listening to us on iTunes or any other audio platforms that allow for ratings and reviews, please leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review to help out this show. If you're watching it on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to us at youtube.com/Trek Untold and give the video a thumbs up and a comment. All of these things help more people find this show and to continue growing and bringing you awesome guests each and every week. Now, without further ado, let's beam in this week's guest. Computer, access interview file. And welcome back to Trek Untold, and now join me on the other side of the screen. This gentleman is one of 5 actors to play 7 characters in the Star Trek franchise, and even without those Star Trek credits, he is, I would think it's safe to say, a living legend in the industry. We are joined today by Mr. Thomas Kopache. Thomas, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Matthew? Hello, everybody.
I'm doing good. It's very, very exciting to talk with you today because, man, your career is just all over the place. You've done some really tremendous, interesting things. And I'm excited to talk not just Trek, but everything else.
Well, great.
So let's just jump on into things here, by the way. And I do want to mention to you, you just recently wrapped up a run in Coal Country at the Cherry Lane Theater, which was here in New York City. So I just want to ask you, how did that go for you?
That was a wonderful experience and such a powerful story to tell. We had done it at the Public Theater pre-pandemic, and we had just opened. I think we'd been running a couple of days after our opening night, and they closed things down. And I remember our director saying, "Oh, this will only probably be a couple of weeks." Well, a couple of years go by, and the Cherry Lane got together with the public and decided to put it up. And then we took it to West Virginia, to the community where the incident, the Upper Big Branch mining disaster actually happened. And that was an incredible experience, meeting the families and the people who went through that. So it was a great success. I wish it had been a happier sort of play, but it was an important play. And we may revive it again. I'm not sure, but there's talk of that.
Are there any plans, maybe not just a revival in New York, but doing more of a nationwide tour?
There has been talk of that. There's also been talk of taking it to Europe. But everything's still in the talking stage, so you know how that goes.
Yeah. Talk is cheap, so hopefully it gets out there.
That's true.
So, as I mentioned, we do have a lot of other things that I want to discuss besides Trek, but I am going to start this thing off with a Trek question, and that's, Thomas, what's your earliest memory of Star Trek? Did you watch the original series? Did you ever watch any other series? Were you a fan of the show?
I became a devoted fan. I watched the original series and was immediately locked into it. And I was so disappointed when it canceled 3 seasons, I believe, right? Is that correct? But then when TNG came on in '87, I got right on that. And I just loved the show. I loved the idea. How do I describe it? Well, first of all, that Earthlings are all of us. Race, color, all of that we're all Earthlings. And meeting these other cultures out in the outer space. I love that idea, and I love the acting. The writing I always thought was superb. So when I went out to LA, I'd been living in New York since the mid-'70s, and in the early '90s, I went out to LA and I said, if I don't do anything else, I have to get on Star Trek Next Generation. And lo and behold, after a few auditions, I got to be Mirok.
We're going to talk about him in a little bit, but I want to keep going a little bit deeper into your origin story, if you will. So,
okay.
Thomas, can you tell us where you were born, who your parents were, and what little Thomas wanted to be when he grew up?
Well, this is going to be a complicated story.
It always is.
I was born in Manchester, New Hampshire. My mother and biological father never married. My mother was married at the time. So my last name is the name of the man she was married to. I do not have my biological father's name. They split up while I was still an infant. So we lived in Manchester, New Hampshire for maybe a few months after I was born. Then my mother came to New York and then various parts of the East Coast. And we ended up in Southern California, where at age 4.5 years old, she met a man named Mr. Frederick, and they married. And for about 10 years, I was Tommy Frederick, but he never adopted me. So when they divorced, the name on my birth certificate was still Kopache, so I went back to Kopache. As a young man, I remember 10, 11 years old, because I never met my biological dad. He had been a bomber pilot in World War II. I wanted to be a fighter pilot.
Uh-huh.
And in high school, I had to get glasses. And the first thing I did after I got my glasses was I called the Air Force recruiting officer and I said, could I be a pilot if I wear glasses? And he said, well, you can't be a fighter pilot, but you could maybe fly other things. And I remember this devastated feeling. And I thought, okay, well, that's not going to happen. I had been doing some acting classes just for fun, but I never thought of myself as an actor. And when I finished high school, I went into the Navy and spent 3.5 years in the United States Navy. And then when I was discharged, I was living in San Diego. And because of the GI Bill, and thank goodness for the GI Bill, I went to a junior college, got an associate arts degree. The first semester, I was going to be an archaeologist. So I was taking classes in archaeology, and about halfway through the semester, I thought, this is too much book work. I can't do it. And I was doing a drama class on the side, and I talked with the drama professor, and he said, well, you know, you could keep getting the GI Bill and just change your major to theater arts. So I did that. And when I finished my associate arts degree, I went to San Diego State College, now San Diego State University, and got my BA there. And then I went to Cal Institute of the Arts, where I got my MFA. But it wasn't until my second year at Cal Arts that I thought I was really going to pursue professional acting. I was sort of just doing it because I didn't know what else to do. But I met a professor who was starting a theater company, and I ended up going to Europe for a couple of years. And then I knew this is what I was going to do. But it was a sort of a circuitous route to really finally make the decision, okay, I'm going to be a professional actor. I lived in Europe for about 1.5 years. We toured Holland, Germany, Italy, doing original theater, avant-garde theater, which was very popular at the time. And then I came to New York, worked at La Mama for about a year or 2 years. And now then started doing soap operas and whatever kind of work came my way.
Yeah, that is quite a journey to get into it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's curious.
I didn't mean to go so long, but
Oh, not at all. Not at all. And it's interesting because a lot of times when I do these interviews, I'll ask folks when they discovered performing. But for you, it was kind of a part of your life, and then just eventually became a whole of your life. So I guess my question in this case then would be, you were doing it just kind of for fun, but when did you find you had an actual passion for it? And what was it that caused you to have this great drive to then want to pursue this as a living?
Well, it's interesting. I was always the class clown in school, and I did it strictly for fun and also as a defense mechanism. We moved a lot, and I found if you could be funny, you could be safe, because there were a lot of bullies in the schools I went to. But I think I discovered in college, I discovered I was really liking doing it, but I couldn't think of it as a profession. It didn't compute with my head. When I went to grad school and started working with this professor and then went to Europe, I discovered the real inner joy of performing. And I guess so I was in my mid to late 20s, and I said, yes, this is what I really want to do. I feel it in my heart. And I probably always did do that, but I had all these other things going on in my head. So, but I would say by my mid to late 20s, I knew that's what I wanted to do.
So you mentioned, you're in New York and you're doing some things here and there. So I'd like to hear if you remember what your very first on-screen professional gig was and what you learned from that experience.
Let's see. That's a good question. I think it would have been soap operas.
Okay.
I was going to say commercials. I did a couple of commercials, but commercial acting is a separate thing. I think my first real acting experience on camera was in a soap opera. I did a few soaps. I did As the World Turns, Loving, One Life to Live, and then there was another one I did. And it was fun. I had been doing a lot of theater. And now soaps, of course, are different from, I guess you say, other types of on-camera. My first regular television gig was on Spenser for Hire.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, in fact, about that because, of course, throughout your career, there are plenty of Star Trek connections hiding among that. And Spenser for Hire had Avery Brooks in the show as Hawk. And Yeah, and unfortunately, I couldn't find the episode to watch for my research, but I'd love to hear if you can, if you remember anything from that, and if you had a chance to meet up or work with
I
Avery.
I can't remember the title of the episode, and I did not know that
It was
Avery
on the night he
Brooks.
was betrayed, 1987.
Oh, 1987. Oh my gosh. I was a crooked cop.
Yep.
So you saw this.
I found out that much. That's about as far as I could find any information about the episode.
Well, it was a lot of fun. I was up in Boston, and I just remember really enjoying myself. And I learned that, well, there's this saying, less is more. You have to be careful with that. But I learned the power of stillness. And I learned patience. You can always do it again. Although when you're the guest actor, you don't want to do that too many times. And just to trust myself. In theater, one person described theater and film and TV as a volume control. With theater, you want the volume up a little bit, and with film and TV, you just take it down a little bit, and that's pretty good rule of thumb. So I was learning a lot of technique, camera technique, and fortunately, I gravitated to the character. I've always gravitated to bad guys for some reason. So I think, yeah, basically some of the basic techniques of on camera, although soap operas helped me a lot. But yeah, I learned stillness is powerful.
Yeah, we've heard that in a lot of these interviews where, if you come from the theater world and then you transition into TV, like you said, you're used to going real big, and it's very much about making things a little bit smaller because, I just spoke with someone recently, and folks will hear this interview soon as well, where you talk about being on a movie screen, and basically you're going to be 20 feet tall, so you don't have to be, enormous. You can just be this, but still convey the exact same thing.
Exactly, and keeping all of the impulses, so it's not like you're crunching yourself in, it's just that you don't have to blow it up so big. But yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
And since we are talking about Star Trek connections here, one more I do want to bring up will be that you did 2 episodes of Boston Legal, and you got to work with Captain Kirk himself, William Shatner, as well as Rene Auberjonois, who you didn't really necessarily act directly with, but he was in the scene with you, or one of the scenes with you.
Yes, he was.
So and that was on your second Boston Legal episode. So yeah, I'd love to hear any stories you have from that set and working with both these gentlemen.
Well, Rene, well, he was a wonderful, wonderful actor, it goes without saying. But my favorite memory of William Shatner at that time was I was sitting in the makeup chair. I was playing the judge, and they were getting me all prepped up. And he came up and tapped my shoulder, and he said, "It's good to be working with you." And that's my fondest memory of William Shatner. Because I didn't get to work with him. Very briefly on Generations I did, but I always thought he was a fine gentleman and a marvelous actor and a great sense of humor. Just a funny guy. He and James Spader would cut up in between takes, and they were a good duo, by the way, I thought. And but that's my fondest memory of William Shatner. And acting opposite him, of course, was a huge thrill.
Yeah, I was able to watch that episode as well, and that looked like it was a fun time. Because I feel like, I wasn't really a fan of Boston Legal, or I guess I just wasn't watching it when it first aired, but having watched it now, I mean, it felt like that was the real William Shatner, more so than what we ever saw in the Star Trek, because this was real William Shatner on screen.
I think there's some truth to that. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before, but yes, I agree with you.
And, it's interesting because I was looking through your resume and I couldn't watch all 130-something things that you were in. But I did happen to note that, so much of your career, you were pretty much in a legal setting, and especially you were a judge a lot of times. So, Boston Legal, Ally McBeal, The Practice.
Ally McBeal, that's the other show I was trying to remember. Yes. And The Practice, yes.
And
that's true. I wasn't always a bad guy. The judges were fun because you have such power. And Messiah, I don't know if you got a chance to see Messiah. That was a mini series, well, pre-pandemic again. And I was a judge in that. It's a fascinating mini series. If you get a chance to watch it, it's wonderful. So the nice thing about a judge is you rule the roost. And yeah, that was quite enjoyable. Ally McBeal, what a fun show that was to work on.
See, that one I did watch, which I wasn't really a big fan of the legal practice shows, like the Law and Orders, that kind of thing. But Ally McBeal, I watched because it felt a little bit more approachable to me.
Yes, it was.
And I'm trying to remember. Can you remind me who was actually in the episodes with you? Was that the time when was that the Lucy Liu era, or is this pre Lucy Liu?
Golly, I think it's pre-Lucy Liu,
Okay,
but
so
I'm not positive.
was Peter McNichol on the show? He was a
Peter
regular from the start,
McNichol
right?
was on the show,
Okay.
and I can't remember who the, my brain, I'm sorry. But Peter McNichol was on the show, yes.
Yeah, because he's one of my favorites. I think he's such a truly underappreciated actor. What a great performer.
Oh, great performer. Yes, really, really good.
Have you had a chance to work with him much through your career? I mean, I don't know if you had to do any scenes with him in Ally McBeal, but have you worked with him or been around him often?
No, just as far as I can remember, just that show.
Okay.
And we didn't really interchange. That's true. We didn't act opposite each other, but he was on the set and we chatted a few times. He's a great guy.
I wish he
And,
did
and
Star
a
Trek so I could have an
wonderful
excuse to talk to him here.
Does he live in New York? I can't remember if he's New York or LA.
No, I don't know, but I'm gonna have to find that out. You know, he was in Ghostbusters too, so that counts as being his New Yorker, right?
That would make him, yes.
Unofficially. But I did find one other thing, besides you being a judge so much, is you have been a DA. You've been in the court a lot in your roles. And one of the ones I did want to mention was Ghost of Mississippi with Alec Baldwin.
That was a really, really wonderful project to work on. Yes, I testified and, Alec Baldwin and was it Gene Hackman? Am I thinking of, yeah. Yeah, that was a wonderful show to work on. And I made a couple of friends, Jordan Lund, who was one of the deputies, and I can't remember the other actor now. We haven't been in touch. But yeah, that was a real good experience and an important film too. Proud to be part of it.
And I do have to throw one other question your way about an unrelated sci-fi franchise, just because this one is for my mom, because she is a giant Richard Dean Anderson fan, and you did an episode of Stargate SG-1.
Stargate SG-1 up in Canada.
Yep.
I also did a Babylon 5.
You did, yes. Babylon 5, I hate to say this on the show because I have to say it so often, but I've never had a chance to sit through the entire series yet, so I'm horrible at that. But Stargate SG-1, I do know. So I'd love to hear if you have any stories about your time on that set, and especially for the sake of my mom, who's probably listening, if you have any stories about RDA, Richard Dean Anderson.
He's a wonderful, he was just terrific to work with. And I remembered I had auditioned for it and it seemed like many weeks went by and I hadn't heard anything. So I let it go. And then I got a call and flew up to Canada, met him, and I can't remember the co-star, but he was such a swell guy to work with and be around. And I'm surprised that series didn't last longer. I think that had a lot of good stuff going for it, but it was a terrific experience. And another guy with a good sense of humor too. Very, very funny guy. But I don't have any particular stories, just that it was an enjoyable experience. And I really had a good time working on it. I kept hoping they'd bring me back, but they didn't.
Well, and I would be remiss to also not ask about your time on The West Wing, which is an amazing show. And what a cast. I mean, just looking back on the ones that you did, I was just like starstruck by who was in that. Just some of the amazing character actors you got to work with in that show.
Just amazing. And I was thinking of that when I was thinking before we started the interview, the two shows that I thought had the sustained good writing were Star Trek Next Generation, the spinoffs, and West Wing. Just each episode, the writing was outstanding. And that was, and working with John Spenser, bless his heart, he's passed on, of course, was a treat. He's such a kind man. And of course, Martin Sheen, just a great guy. And then just after the pandemic started, they did a sort of a get out vote revival of West Wing, and I got to go do
the 2020 reunion special.
2020 reunion special, yes. And that was a real treat. Just seeing all these people again was just so wonderful. Allison Janney and just everybody. And everybody looked good, and I thought it came off really well too.
I was wondering about that special, in fact, because, again, that is many, many years after the series had initially aired. So when you come back on set with all of these people, I mean, did it just feel like the puzzle pieces fell right back into place, or did you have to kind of find yourselves again?
I was nervous about it, and it did just seem like everything fell into place. Wow. I was so surprised because I thought, well, gosh, I haven't seen so-and-so in years, but everybody just came together. And because it was advertised as a filmed reading, we were allowed to have our scripts with us to look at if we needed to. It sort of loosened things up in a way that was really, really nice. And So yeah, we did. We just fell together and got back in. It was like we had just been working on it the day before, and these years hadn't gone by. And Martin Sheen is just amazing. He's another amazing guy. It's fabulous.
Yeah, I
And
think
Sterling K. Brown, who did the part that John Spenser had played, was marvelous. Just terrific.
yeah, I think that's one of those TV shows that really elevated what television can be.
I
And
agree.
it feels like anytime you watch an episode of that show, it's just like a giant production. It feels like you're on a multi-million-dollar set, and not like a Star Trek set where it's all sorts of special effects, but the mood, the setting, the cinematography, the people who are performing in it, it just feels like it is this giant, beautiful ensemble production that's meant to be on the big screen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think the creators of that show really emphasized that. The first episode I did, I was welcomed like, you're in our family, welcome to our family. And I didn't know I'd be coming back at all. I just did the one episode. But that was every time I was on it, that was my experience. And I think that goes to Aaron Sorkin and all the one. In fact, after I did my scene in that first episode, Aaron Sorkin came down onto the set and shook my hand and thanked me. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. Because other shows I had done, everybody's gracious, you do your bit and then you leave. But it was really like, hey, come, you're in our family, And that maintained throughout the series, I believe.
To do a show like that and to be a recurring character like you were, to come back so often, I'm wondering if that changed the way that you look at politics in any way, or the way that you think about government in any particular way. Did that have any effect on you?
Well, it emphasized my leftist leanings, and it it got me thinking. Some of the episodes, I got to appreciate what goes on in these conferences in the White House, and it's serious stuff. Of course, that's a silly thing to say. Of course, it's serious, but I got to appreciate the inner workings. Now, of course, it's a TV drama, but they did their research and they were very accurate. And I really began to appreciate much more how the executive branch works. And but as far as my politics goes, that stayed the same. And I think it was in that ballpark anyway, the show. I won't speak for everybody, but
Well, to paraphrase Peter Falk, just one last thing before we move on to Star Trek stuff here.
sure.
And there's one other show that you did that we talk about a lot on this show, and you'll be surprised, because I love talking about Murder, She Wrote. And you were in a two-parter from the final season, which was called Nan's Ghost, and that brought Jessica, Angela Lansbury, her character Jessica, over to Ireland. And this trip, of course, manages to get her wrapped up into a giant murder mystery and also sort of a ghost story. It's, for Star Trek fans, I would say this one's kind of like Sub Rosa without the sex candle ghost.
Yes.
And I don't know if Thomas even know that reference, but yeah, that's a pretty good way to encapsulate that one.
I'm trying to remember. I've lost the name of the lead actors.
Angela Lansbury?
Angela Lansbury. Thank you. My gosh, my brain. Our first entrance, I'm carrying the suitcases. I'm the butler, the Irish butler. And we're waiting to hear action. And she starts tap dancing outside the door. And I'm watching her, and she said, "Isn't this fun? Isn't this just great fun?" And I went, "Yeah, you bet." And then they said action, and we opened the door and we went in and entered. That's my fondest memory of Angela Lansbury. She really loved doing what she was doing, what she is doing. And that was a great treat to work on that show. And I thought it was well written too, for the kind of drama it was. And the actors were all superb. Again, I've been very fortunate to work with just terrific actors. I won't name any names of actors I didn't particularly like, but I think just about everything I've done, I've worked with superior talent.
And I think one of the nice things about this particular episode we're talking about is that also was a two-parter, so we really got to spend time with the characters and really get to know them, and everybody has a lot going on. And in particular, your character Leonard, Leonard is not really a spoiler, but anybody who watches the first act even will get this information. Leonard, the main butler, he's a butler for this state, but he's also a former convict, and he's also working for this other crooked cop to take photos of this couple. There's a lot going on here. It's a pretty meaty role.
I had so much fun with that. And Yeah, who was the actor with the cop that we had a wonderful scene together. And yeah, it was a lot of stuff. I was not prepared because the initial script I read, there was much less that I did in the script, but then they added things on. And so I was very, very thrilled to have all this other stuff to do. It was a great show to work on.
Murder, She Wrote is an interesting little thing too, because in some ways it's realistic, but it's also a little bit campy, I feel like at times.
A little bit, yeah. And
So-
I think that's what she meant when she was doing, because I thought about that. I thought it's a serious show, but there's camp in there. And I think she was conveying that to us actors who were following behind her on our first entrance, that don't be afraid to have fun.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on this type of acting, because you're from we're talking about The West Wing a few minutes ago, and that's a very dramatic, very serious role, and then we
Yeah.
jump into something like Murder, She Wrote, where it's a lot more campy, a lot more silly. There's Malcolm in the Middle that you did, which also is a little bit fun.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess I'd like to ask, do you have a preference to the way you perform? Do you want to be serious, gritty, realistic, coal country, hard-boiled kind of acting, or do you like kind of letting loose and doing more stuff like Murder, She Wrote, let's say?
Well, that's an interesting question. If I had no, I think I enjoy both equally. There's a certain freedom in being silly that I really enjoyed, but I also, gosh, I'd have to say it's 50-50, because the drama on West Wing could be so compelling and fill you, but to do good comedy, I think good comedic actors are good dramatic actors. And I like to think I'm a pretty good comedic actor. And I had a discussion with a friend of mine who felt the same way. He said, you notice that some of these comic actors that we think of as comedians, when we see them in drama, they just seem to be able to do it and have a depth to them. And it might be because comedy and drama, the two masks are right side by side. But I'd say, depending on the comedy, I've been lucky in the ones I've done that I thought they were pretty good quality. I would say it's, I like them both equally.
Well, I want to follow it up with basically something we talked about much earlier in the interview when we were talking about your origins in acting. And you talked about finding the inner joy in performing. So, we're talking about drama right now also. And, you talked about just moments ago the tension of doing drama and that kind of thing. So, I'm trying to, I guess, figure out how you marry those two things. You use the phrase inner joy. Now we're talking about high tension drama. Where does the joy come into drama? How do you find, I guess, joy in that? Because that's, if you're doing a role that is very dramatic and very serious, it's going to be the kind of thing that probably weighs a lot on your shoulders also. So what is that inner joy from something like that?
I think it's the creative spirit. Just saying, let's make this. It has no judgment on serious or funny. It's just, I'm getting to create something. And that's the inner joy I'm talking about. It's not haha joy, just the fulfilling, the feeling that you're making something. And to make a character, there's just a satisfaction and a joy in creation. I don't know if that's answers your question, but
I think so. If that, to paraphrase, you can tell me if I'm getting this right or wrong. For you, acting is the process. It's more about the process, not necessarily the end result.
I would say yes, and the process varies. Malcolm in the Middle was about as silly as you can get, and so opposite from what I did in West Wing. And yet the creative energy and the joy of making it is the same for me. Malcolm in the Middle, what a hoot that was. I still laugh. I think of that hairpiece I wore and given my hairline. But yeah, I would say for me, it's just, I'm getting to make something. The creative spirit is opening up and I'm getting to make something. And when you work with a good director who gives you room, not to violate the script, but to just explore variations of how to deliver your character, it's so satisfying. Comedy or drama.
Trek Untold will return momentarily.
Trek Untold is sponsored by Triple Fiction Productions. Celebrating 15 years in business in 2023, TFP creates 3D printed Star Trek and sci-fi inspired items that fit into any collection. Whether you're a cosplayer who wants a Starfleet phaser, a Bajoran tricorder, or a Klingon dagger, or a toy collector looking for that special accessory or diorama to make your figures truly stand out, Triple Fiction Productions has exactly what you need. And for you figure fanatics, that includes products that are the perfect size for Galoob, Mego, Playmates, and everything in between. All products are 3D printed in the US, with new designs constantly being updated on their website. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, which is a great way to save money as you build your collection. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, which is a great way to save money as you build your collection. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, where the more you order, the more discounts you receive. TFP also has a pay what you want section, where clearance or misprinted items are available at a discounted price. Best of all, every product can be shipped worldwide. As a special bonus for listeners of this show, Trek Untold has a special discount code just for you. Enter Untold10 at checkout for 10% off of all orders with no minimum purchase required. That's 10% off using Untold10. To see all of their products, head to triple-fictionproductions.net. Or to stay up to date on their newest products, find them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Triple Fiction Productions, where something is only impossible until it happens.
Are you looking for the perfect fashion statement to show you're a geek and proud of it? Well, welcome to Geek Girls Castle, where I make fun and functional geeky clothing and accessories for every occasion. My name is Missy, and I started creating my own gear and apparel in 2015 to bring nerdy products to the geek girl population, which does include all LGBTQA+, non-binary, and POC and BIPOC folks. I couldn't find anything for us gals except t-shirts, so I decided to combine my passion for fashion with my fandoms, ranging from handmade skirts with really large pockets, travel accessories like toiletry bags, luggage tags, and zippered pouches. I also embroider nerdy items for home decor like wall hangings and hand towels, and products like keychains, bookmarks, and journal covers. Need something to carry all that in? Well, I make great bags to put all those accessories into or onto. Whether you like Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, Marvel, DC, and everything else in between, there is something for every geek girl. My website is constantly updated with new styles and fandoms, no matter what time or dimension you come from. If you'd like to browse my products or ask for something custom, visit me at geekgirlscastle.com. That's geekgirlscastle.com.
Have you ever watched a YouTube video and said you wish you could do what they were doing? Whether it's the filming, the production, the editing. Maybe you listen to your favorite podcast and you wondered how they put that show together, how they got that great sound quality, what gear they use, how much does it cost to get started? Or maybe you checked out a video or read a book about one of your favorite entrepreneurs and it made you say, I want to live that life. I want to do what they do. Then check out my podcast, Toys and Tech of the Trade. I'm Rich Butler, and I've been making podcasts for almost 2 decades, speaking with experts across all fields to get to the bottom of the hows and whys of their achievements. Each week, I sit down with these amazing people who have carved their own path in life and share the gadgets, the gear, and the tech that they rely on to create their content, the methods that they use to run their business, and the habits and trends that are part of their daily routine and their way of life. And all of that, of course, gets put together to make them successful. We pull back the curtain on the process to help you understand what these people do differently so that you can draw inspiration and get ideas and be inspired so that you can take action today. This podcast is inspiring, educational, it's enlightening, and most of all, it's a lot of fun. I want you to join me on this journey so that you can use the tools and advice shared in this podcast to level up your business or creative endeavors, giving you all the tips, tactics, and tools so that you can transform what you're doing from a side hustle into a full-time lifestyle where you can collect a paycheck for doing what you love. Check out Toys and Tech of the Trade wherever you listen to podcasts, and check out the RageWorks Network at RageWorksNetwork.com for more info on this podcast and all of the many other great shows that we have on the RageWorks Podcast Network. That's Toys and Tech of the Trade with some assembly required.
All right, well, Thomas, let's beam into our Star Trek discussion now, and we have a lot to talk about. So let's just start at the very beginning, which, as I've been told, is a very good place to start. So
Yeah.
your first Star Trek appearance was in season 5 of The Next Generation in the episode titled The Next Phase, and that's where you played a Romulan scientist named Mirok. So
Yes.
first thing, had you ever auditioned for Star Trek before, and do you remember what the casting process was like for this character?
Casting process was pretty similar to other casting process. You get your sides. Well, you got your sides in those days, and you go over the material. And because I was such a fan of the show, I had a sense of the style and a sense of how a Romulan. Well, I had auditioned for a couple other characters. I had auditioned 2 or 3 times before I got Mirok.
Okay.
But when I got to audition for Mirok, I just thought of something. Somebody had said to me, no empathy. I always felt the difference between the Romulans and the Vulcans was that there's a certain empathy that a Vulcan had, and a Romulan's equally intelligent, brilliant beings, but much colder. And I would say ruthless, but it's not even ruthless. It's just, that's mine. I want it. You're in my way. Get out of my way. I take it. No qualms. And I thought about that when I was playing, when I did the audition. And I think I read through it once. They asked me to do one part again because there was something they wanted to hear me repeat, but I didn't change anything. And the next day I got called and I was Mirok.
And I just want to throw you a quick compliment here because, that was a very excellent observation about the Romulans versus the Vulcans. That's a very great way to look at that.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. I've been thinking about that for many years because I loved the show so much. And I thought, who's the brain that created these ideas, these beings? And the writing on that show, again, just outstanding.
Yeah. Yeah, I just find it fun that we're waxing poetic about the process of what drama is, and now we're talking about, the unempathetic Romulans and how that all fits into acting. So that's just a little fun juxtaposition there to note. But
oh, yes. Because Mirok would justify himself. He wouldn't say, I'm a bad guy. He'd just say, this is how it is, folks. I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good here. I'd like to ask if you remember anything about the makeup process to become a Romulan. I mean, had you ever done any crazy prosthetics like that before?
That's a great question. I had not. And when I was in college, we did the makeup department asked if some actors would come in to do live casting. So that was my first experience with it. And that I discovered that I was very patient with it. Some actors, because you sat in that for over an hour, sometimes 2 hours, with straws in your nose to breathe through. So I was a little bit prepared for that, but I never felt any kind of discomfort. I just knew I kind of went into Zen mode. You sit still, you're encased completely except for these 2 little straws that you can breathe through your nose. And remarkably, because I had wondered, am I going to be able to do this again in college? It hadn't been a problem, but a few years had gone by since then. And it was fine. And I think that might have been why I got to do some other aliens down the road, because Michael Westmore was the makeup artist on that first one. And what a genius. What a brilliant man. And he complimented me. He said, boy, you're good at this. And all I was doing was sitting still, but I kept thinking maybe I'll get to do more of these. A little side note, when I went into the makeup department, he had on his wall a whole series of what I found out were suggestions for various aliens that never got used.
Wow.
And I mean, creatures that your wildest imagination couldn't come up with. And they were just all along this wall. And he said, oh yeah, those are things that I made that they decided they didn't want. And he kept them. I wish I had taken a photograph of that because it was remarkable. But I was always comfortable with doing the makeup. And later on, I did some one of the spinoffs where the makeup took over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Sitting still in the chair. And I go into a Zen mode. That's all I can say. It's important, and I want to forewarn any actors. Of course, the technology now is more advanced. The materials they use, you don't have to sit quite so long, but make sure you are comfortable with that. I got one role, and I can't remember which show it was, because an actor had claustrophobia and freaked out with it on, and I felt for him, of course, but it's important to just be patient, breathe slowly, and be patient.
Do you remember exactly how long it took to do the Romulan makeup each day?
The Romulan makeup, once they did the live casting, it took over an hour.
It's not too bad in Star Trek time.
Maybe closer to an hour and a half, actually, because the wig piece took some time. So I'd say an hour and a half minimum.
And
the first day was almost 2 hours, actually.
Okay, that's not so bad though. I mean, we talked to folks where it's like 3, 4, 5 hours, so 2 hours ain't bad.
Later on, I did one that took that long.
We'll get to that one.
Yeah.
But and you know, one other thing too about the Romulan outfit is their wardrobe is just I don't even have the words to describe it. It's like giant shoulder pads, this big weird colors. I mean, do you remember anything about that outfit? And more importantly, if you do remember anything about it, was it at least comfortable to wear? Because it sure didn't look like it was comfortable to wear.
I have to say, and I love the wardrobe department, it wasn't the most comfortable costume. After a couple of hours, I would find a place to lean against a wall and just kind of let my spine stretch out. I couldn't lie down, but I would find various ways to accommodate the wardrobe. Actually, that was surprisingly, because the makeup was quite involved, but it was the wardrobe got a little bit uncomfortable. Hats off to the wardrobe people, though. It looked great.
It definitely does. I just never want to wear that costume. So kudos to you for surviving that.
Yeah. And also, I think it's okay to say this on the show, going to the bathroom was a bit of an ordeal.
Yes.
They'd say, look, can you wait? Can you wait? And I'd say, yes, okay, I can wait. And then finally they'd unzip me and unattach me, and I'd run to the bathroom and get reattached. So that was a little uncomfortable.
And, you know, in this episode, you get to spend a lot of time with a lot of the key cast members, including Jonathan Frakes, Michael Dorn, Brent Spiner, LeVar Burton, Michelle Forbes. And, you know, this shoot in particular is interesting because you're running around with a whole lot of other Vulcans, a whole other bunch of Romulans. You know, there's a lot of other aliens on the set with you. And for that, too, it's also, I would imagine, a pretty chaotic set because you're on this Romulan bridge that's been destroyed and all banged up. It's very dark, very dimly lit. So, you know, I'd like to hear, I guess, first off, if you remember anything about working with the cast and crew, and secondly, what you can remember about the scenes you shot. I mean, was it as hectic as it appeared to be from my perspective?
I'm glad it appeared to be that way because they were so organized. The crew, and of course the cast were the regulars. They were, you know, I was a little thrown because it looked a little chaotic, but then I just got into my groove and I had people guiding me, and the crew on that show, every episode I did was simply outstanding. They watched you, they took good care of you. And so I'm glad it did look as chaotic as it looked, but it wasn't that way at all on set. It was very well organized. Good traffic cops.
That's a good way to put it. Now, I don't know if you're the kind of actor who likes to watch himself on TV when he's on there, but you know, this is Star Trek. This is kind of special, right? So did you actually watch your first time on Star Trek when it aired?
I did, and I was nervous. I'm a little leery about watching myself, but I had to watch it because I wanted to see how the makeup looked, and I was blown away. And then I thought, hey, that's good. And who was my Romulan cohort? Susanna Thompson, I believe it was. She was just terrific to work with too. And we called each other afterwards and said, hey, great job. So yeah, that was fun. And I did watch each Star Trek afterwards, and most of the West Wings too. But sometimes I'd get a little shy and I'd have a friend tell me about it. But because as an actor, you want to keep your reel up to date and you have to get all your most recent work on a reel, I would end up eventually watching everything, but sometimes not on the first airing.
So let's jump ahead a little bit now to your second appearance, which would have been in season 7. We're still in Next Generation here. And this time around, you played a train engineer, which is like a mind-boggling thing to say. It's like, here's a train engineer on Star Trek.
On the holodeck.
On the holodeck, yeah. And I would imagine this would be a lot easier for you in makeup and wardrobe than being a Romulan, right?
So much easier, just the mustache. But yeah, that was my one human. Well, in Generations, I was a human too. But that was a trip. That was so trippy because I always was curious about it, the holodeck. And this is the one where the holodeck runs amok and they're trapped. And I remember it was Riker, yeah, Jonathan Frakes.
Frakes, yep.
Terrific guy, another terrific guy to work with. And I just remember going up and down and making these announcements. And then when he kills me, I thought, that's a spoiler alert, sorry. But I wasn't really a human being. I was a holodeck configuration. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And gosh, I wish I could remember more of it, but the whole idea of it, I thought was so trippy. That this thing that they had relied on so faithfully suddenly runs amok and goes crazy on them.
Yeah, I think this is definitely like season 7's attempt at camp, like we were talking about a little bit earlier. It's a little bit more like in the vein of the original Star Trek.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true. And
see if I can refresh your memory a little bit. In fact, because one of the scenes that stands out is the fact that you do get to have a death scene in this. That's because you are shot by a mafia hitman. So you got to be squibbed on a Star Trek show, and that doesn't really happen very often because usually it's just phasers and lasers and it's all done in post. But this time around, you actually get squibbed. So yeah. I'd like to hear if you had done that before and if you remember anything about that experience.
I did do it once before in a low budget film. This was done much better. The low budget film didn't work so well.
You're lucky it wasn't a real gun on that film, probably.
Oh gosh. Oh yeah. But the squib effect, I think it was in the chest, lower stomach. I remember them taping it to me and being instructed to be very careful with it. And when he stabs me, to lean into it to help it burst out. And I think it worked. I can't remember now, it's been so long, but yeah, and wearing that for I think about 2 hours before we actually got to the moment was a little uncomfortable, but it worked. And I did one other. Oh no, I didn't. I thought I did. No, that was the only one.
And this episode also had an appearance by David Huddleston, who, an amazing actor. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but great resume, amazing work. People have seen him in, I think most people who are watching this show know him from The Big Lebowski, but he also did Blazing Saddles and so many other really great things. I don't know if you had a chance to chat with him at all, but did you spend any time with David Huddleston?
We chatted a little bit, and I forgot that he passed. Oh my gosh. A terrific guy, and what a resume. Yeah, we chatted a little bit, not very much, but a little bit. And yeah, great guy.
I would imagine too, just, as we wrap up this episode in particular, this is, I imagine, a pretty quick roll, right? So it seems like you're just there for 1 or 2 scenes. Was it like a full day for you, or were you there for like an entire week for the whole production just to be safe?
I think on that episode, I was there for the whole day, and then they held me a day, because I think everything I shot was shot in 1 day, but they held me a day just in case they needed to do some. So it was a 2-day gig.
All right, well, that's perfect segue then, I think, for this as we come to your 3rd Star Trek appearance, because that is in Star Trek Generations. And so I've actually talked to someone who was in that exact scene with you. I'm not going to say in the stories he told me just yet, because I want to hear what you say first. But let's just start at the very top, and I want to, again, focus on the outfits, because that's a big part of Trek stuff here. So in Generations, you got to wear what's called the Maroon Monster, I believe it is, outfit.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is a really cool outfit. That's like one of my favorite Star Trek outfits of all time. How did it feel to put that uniform on?
I can't tell you, I wanted to take it home. I loved it. I just felt, as soon as I put that on, that was my character. I was a communications officer. I put that on and I was ready to do my gig. It's such a great costume. It's just so wonderful. I'm curious who it was that I worked with.
So, well, you didn't work directly with him, but he was in the scene, and it was John Putch. And Putch did our show quite some time ago, and he had a lot of stories about Generations. So I'm hoping today, again, I don't want to say anything because I want to see if you corroborate those tales.
Oh, okay.
But he, in particular, it was some stories about William Shatner, because that really is the focus of this scene here. It's Alan Ruck and William Shatner, but Shatner is basically, he's retired at this point, but he ends up taking control of the situation and things happen. So, I guess let's just start here. If you have any memories of Shatner and what happened, and also how long was that shoot? Because I think from what I heard, it was supposed to be one length of time. It ended up being a completely different length of time.
My original gig was supposed to be a week, and I ended up, I think it was almost 3 weeks that I was on the set. I didn't get to interact with William Shatner too much, but he came and sat with the other, oh gosh, the woman, I can't remember her name.
Walter Koenig and James Doohan were in that scene also.
Yes, they came over and we would chat a little bit. And I mean, these guys had been working together for so long. It was like hanging out with the gang. Well, he was just warm and funny, and could just be chatting away, and then they'd say, okay, let's go, and boom, 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 he's ready to go, and total professional. My favorite memory of that was when, and I can't remember when it happens in the movie, but the ship rocks. There's I don't think we collide with anything. We hit something, and they had these hydraulics underneath the whole sound stage. And the first time they did it, it was shocking. It was really, really a marvelous effect. And we're flopping all over the place. And I think that's one of my favorite memories of just being on this big movie. And but Shatner and the rest of the crew, everybody. My only sad thing was that Leonard Nimoy wasn't on that one. I really wanted to meet him, but. And then, yeah, it turned out a lot of the shooting, we would be in background, but they needed us. So it turned out to be, what was 1 week turned out to be over 2 weeks. And that was cool.
So I don't know if you are aware, but at that time, Shatner had just put out a book, and that book had a lot of not so nice things about a lot of his former castmates, and that included James Doohan and Walter Koenig. So what I was told is that there was a little bit of tension on set, and that Walter and James, they interacted when they had to, but it seemed that Shatner was kind of oblivious to the fact that they were kind of mad at him, and they just kind of tried their best to stay away for the most part.
Now, you know what I'm remembering? They didn't hang together as much. That's true. There wasn't any tension that I picked up on. But yes, that's true. Now I'm remembering when I was talking about the camaraderie, it was more Shatner and some other people. And they were there and they chatted. Yes, I was not aware of the book at the time. I've heard about it since, but I didn't realize it came out at that time. Yeah, there was a little bit of that, a little bit. I can't say it was that I noticed major, but it wasn't as warm and fuzzy as I originally said. Shatner was very warm with the certain other people, but it wasn't cold, but it wasn't exactly palsy-wowsy. That's the best I can say about it.
All right. Well, I'm going to see if I could jog your memory a little bit, because I know it was a long time ago, and it was a long shoot also for you. But so there's one other scene where it happens where Shatner is hanging out by the captain's chair, and he takes this like moment to kind of just like pet the captain's chair almost before he goes off to do something else. Do you remember anything about that?
I remember. Let's see, where was I? Because I wasn't in the scene. I remember being moved by it. I thought, yeah, that's right. He sort of strokes the chair a little bit, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you just jogged my memory. I was watching that. And I didn't know if he had added that, if that was part of the script, but it was quite moving. And I guess it was him saying bye-bye.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's in my interview with John Putch. We did talk about that scene because I picked up on that, how it felt kind of odd or almost out of place, and apparently it was something that Shatner added, and I guess he had to like maybe fight a little bit to get that added in there. So just a little interesting thing there. So, but for the most part, you're saying you didn't really see too much craziness with Shatner, not too much tension, just him kind of doing his own thing. And
yeah, I have to say I didn't notice it. It may have been there, but I didn't notice it. But I am wrong in saying that they were real close, palsy-wowsy. I was thinking of Shatner and some other people that were there, but I didn't feel any real tension. Maybe I just wasn't looking, or I wasn't around when that happened. I don't remember that.
Well, Thomas, let's jump over to Star Trek Voyager now, which is your first appearance in that show, and that was in the second season episode, The Thaw. Which, talk about camp, Thomas. This is an unusual and kind of unsettling episode, in my opinion, in a lot of ways.
Oh, a lot of ways, yeah.
Yeah, and you play an alien named Viorsa.
Viorsa?
That is an interesting makeup also here. So yeah, tell us about that, makeup and hairpiece.
The makeup took a good amount of time. I don't think it was as long as, I don't know. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was close to 2 hours. It was close to 2 hours. I love the character. He ends in not a very happy way, but the set was so surreal. They had all the Cirque du Soleil people. Well, not all of the Cirque du Soleil, but a bunch of Cirque du Soleil people doing that weird acrobatic thing.
Yeah.
And I asked the AD, I said, are we aware of that? And he says, yes, you're aware of it. It's the computer generated, they're sort of beings, they're watching you and they're controlling you. And, but I got to talk with some of the Cirque du Soleil people, and what a fascinating group of people they were, and athletic. Oh my gosh. Who else was on that?
Well, that particular episode also had Michael McKean. He was the clown.
Michael McKean, yes,
Carol
that's the name.
Carol Stroiken. I never know how to say his name. Carol Stroiken. He was also a Trek regular. You had Patty Maloney as well. So lots of interesting character actors in this one.
A lot of them, and it was a strange episode, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When I read the script, I thought, wow, this is different territory. But I think it worked. I think it worked very well. And one thing I thought about, this is interesting, because about a month and a half ago, I was talking with my wife. We were watching people walk down the street on their cell phones, and we noticed how many people were just oblivious to traffic. And it came to mind that episode, the computer taking over the planet, and everybody's put in the core of the planet and controlled by this. And I thought, well, I hope we're not going in that direction, but there was something a little prescient about it. Yeah.
That's an interesting observation. This episode is really cool too, because it has Michael McKean. I do want to just back it up to talk about him for a second, because I am a big fan of his work. I mean, ever since I saw Spinal Tap when I was a little itty bitty boy, fell in love with all of his work and all the work that they do together. So yeah, do you remember anything from Michael McKean? Did you have any chance to chat?
I had a chance to chat with him a little bit, and told him what a fan I was, and he appreciated that. And we just talked in general about. We talked a little bit about the script, but just general conversation. And he talked a little bit about his enjoyment of his comedy characters, which, gosh, how many has he done? Or I lost count, but he's a warm and gregarious guy, and he had a lot of fun with that character. I think he added a few things in there too, which they let him do with some dialogue and stuff like that. But hey, he's Michael McKean, so.
Yeah, one of these days I got to find a way to get him on this show, because man, the things I would ask that man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, and he's a good storyteller. He talked a lot about different things when he worked on those different movies he had done, and some inside jokes and his appreciation of rock music.
Now, you mentioned this a little bit earlier too. Your character doesn't exactly make it out of this episode in one piece. Let's put it that way.
No.
And I got to say, that is a pretty disturbing death scene. Yeah. Like, what do you think about that? That was really chaotic and just like, yikes.
Yeah, I was a little surprised when I read it, and then I thought, okay, and it wasn't. I mean,
it takes a turn for the dark there in that scene.
It goes very dark, and I think I was disturbed by it, but it was the story, and one of the darker episodes that I've done, and to end that way.
Yeah, and that whole episode.
Claim to fame.
Yeah, that whole episode is such a bizarre one. So I would like to ask you more things about it, but I think I'm ready to move on, because I want to be able to sleep tonight. So let's talk about one of my favorite dramatic roles you did in Trek, which will be over in DS9, and that will be your 2 appearances as Kira Nerys' father, Kira Tabin. And those 2 episodes were first you appeared in Ties of Blood and Water, and then again we saw you in Wrongs Darker Than Death of Night. Both times you're a Bajoran. But also from different time periods. First time we see you are, I guess, let's say contemporary version, and then the second time we see a younger version of this character. So let's just talk about a little bit about the Bajoran makeup, and also, I guess, what they did to de-age you for that second one.
They did a lot of, what's the term when they in-paint? The makeup was actually surprisingly pretty quick compared to the other ones. The aging was more just in filling in with, there's a term, of makeup term, but creating lines on the face. And of course, I think in that episode, I'm dying.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I was covered up quite a bit, but it was basically the same makeup and then a lot of in painting in different areas to just add the aging. And that took a little more time than the original, than the first makeup. In painting it can be quite extensively, because the detail work has to be so precise, and they go through each line of the face. And yeah, that took considerably longer than the other episode.
And how did you enjoy working with Nana Visitor? You know, we had her on the show a while ago, and she was amazing.
She's such a dear.
Yeah.
She was wonderful to work with. And of course, how many seasons? That was
a full 7 seasons.
Yeah. Again, warm, welcoming, and a sheer delight to be around and to work with. And very proud to say I was her father.
And these are some very dramatic moments that you share. I mean, these aren't necessarily, you know, long scenes or in the entire episode, but the scenes you have, I mean, there is a lot of drama, a lot of intensity to what you're doing there. I mean, first off, it is your death scene, which is one thing we could definitely talk about. We can go into detail about, if you want, about how you did that kind of thing. But, you know, then we see you again later on, a younger version of this character meeting his daughter that he doesn't even know is his daughter, and just dealing with what's going on in this settlement, essentially. So it's a lot happening in this character for the very short time that we see him.
Yeah, yes, a lot. The death scene was, I don't want to say, no, not difficult. Not difficult. It wasn't difficult.
I mean, it is a complex scene, though, because, I mean, we really don't actually see your character die on screen. It's basically, yeah, we see the drama leading up to before that happens.
Yes, and I wanted to convey the love for his daughter at the same time that gradually eroding of my energy. And so it was a little challenging in that sense, because I wanted the life of the love energy to come through, and then just the letting go. That's best. I think that's what did Avery Brooks direct that episode? But he said, he leaned into me when we did I think a second take, and he said, just let go, just let go. Keep it in your eyes and let everything else go. And I remember him whispering that in my ear, and I think I achieved that.
Yeah, and you are correct. It is Avery Brooks. I don't know how I missed that note. So thank you for catching me up on that.
Yeah, it just came to my mind because I remember he was on the show, and he was a terrific director too. I mean, what a talented guy.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you also mentioned what he told you, because, you know, one of the things I noted in both of your DS9 roles as this character was, like, I really felt the character, and I think it really came through your eyes. Like, you have some very expressive eyes, and that was what really, I think, helped show who the character is. So, you know, I don't know if you feel the same way about me, if you did a lot of eye acting for this character, but I'd love to hear if you can tell me a bit about how you would use your eyes through your Star Trek roles in general, and just in acting as a whole.
Well, I've never thought about it too much in my acting as a whole, except to remember that on camera, you can convey a lot, and with your eyes, of course. But in alien makeup, I realized how important it was, because so much of your face can't move sometimes. So everything really, so I just would channel all of my energy into my vision, into the looking, and creating, well, with my daughter, with Kira, it was so easy to see the love, or to see her and feel love. So I would just let go of everything else and just put everything into my focus without thinking too hard about it. Because if you just open yourself up, a lot of stuff comes through your eyes anyway. But the technique, I never thought of the technique of eye acting, but it is important for on camera. And I think it's just focusing. I'm looking at you, and there's a camera over here, there's all this stuff going on, but it's just you and me together. And that's the world. And I guess that's where the eyes become so important.
I'm a little bit biased here because DS9 is my favorite of the Star Trek series, but I
It
personally
is.
feel like, DS9 especially, you really got to flex your acting muscles, and we haven't jumped into Enterprise yet, which we're about to do, but because one of your Enterprise roles is a very big one. But I feel like especially here in these two DS9 episodes, like we really see what you're capable of doing in a way we didn't get to see in any of the previous Trek roles before. Do you feel the same way?
I do in a way, yes, because of the dramatic quality of it. Yes, I loved everything I ever did on any of the Star Treks. But yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. That I'm starting to be moved by that final scene.
A very good scene.
Yes, it was, and I think that working with her, and that's the other thing. If you're focused on your partner, they can pull things out of you, and she had that quality of just bringing me out of myself, bringing me to her. She's a marvelous talent.
Yeah, and I think it's very much okay to be moved by that scene because DS9 is a show that'll mess you up, emotionally speaking. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, that is a heavy one. Every episode of that show practically is just a real heavy hitter in terms of emotions. And that scene is it is really a heart-wrenching scene that you do, your death scene, because again, it happens off screen. Kira's not there for it, and neither are we, the audience. So it really hits us in a way that almost feels, very real, because not often does a child, let's say, get to be there for the death of their parents. That's a very real kind of thing to feel.
That's true. That's true. And that was interesting that they did it that way. I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to slightly happier times, shall we? Because DS9 is going to make us cry if we keep talking about it. But
yes,
let's talk about Enterprise.
I was getting so moved. I remember seeing her face looking at me, and yes, let's move on.
Well, I will admit to you, Thomas, I did cry at that scene. And the very end of the episode too, same thing. So I definitely feel you did excellent work there. Coming from a Trekkie and someone who just appreciates great acting, and that's a fine moment on DS9 history.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, happier times, Enterprise. You were a part of the very first episode of Enterprise, and you are a Vulcan. So you are Toss, I believe his name was.
Yeah, and when I went to LA, I said, I want to be on Star Trek Next Generation, and can I be a Vulcan? I got to do a lot of things, and so I sort of let it go. And then lo and behold, I get to be Toss on Enterprise, which I thought was a good series too. And that episode, I didn't get to be such a nice Vulcan, but it was a lot of fun. And the makeup on that, I loved how I looked, and the robes. Yeah, those robes were amazing.
Very nice wardrobe. And we didn't really talk about this, I guess, too in depth when we talked about the Romulan, but let's talk about the ears a little bit. So, what is the prosthetic process like for the ears? And more importantly, for you as someone who grew up loving Star Trek, what was it like for you to put on those ears for the first time, and especially to be a Vulcan now?
Well, I was sitting in the makeup chair, and it took longer than I thought it would take because they're quite substantial. And they were just finishing me up, and they needed to take a break for something. So I decided to turn and look in the mirror, and I just went, whoa, I'm a Vulcan. I was so thrilled. And yeah, but it's a lot, it was an involved process, but it was great makeup artists, always the top flight people. And I thought the look was just fabulous. And I really loved that look. I finally got to be a Vulcan.
Yes. Going back for a second to talk about how you described the Romulans earlier, you said that they lack empathy. But in the case of a Vulcan, they are kind of in control of their emotions. They don't really have much. But you are a Vulcan who's also a little bit, as you said, antagonistic. So how did you manage to play that? Was that a challenge to do that kind of a role?
Well, I was a little disappointed because I wanted to be a more empathetic Vulcan, but I thought of Mirok. I thought, okay, well, we're cousins. We're okay. I'm not quite as cold, but I thought of arrogance. I'm superior to you. I used that more than not being completely empathetic, but just that I know more than you. I'm superior, and a certain arrogance, like some of these British royalty dramas. In fact, I thought of that when I was doing it. I thought, yes, what if I was the king of so-and-so? And I used that a little bit in playing that character.
So you are someone who at this point has walked on the sets of TNG, of DS9, of Voyager. Here you are on the pilot of Enterprise, and it is a very different show. I mean, I don't know if you got to see the entire script or what they gave you access to for that pilot, but, it's a very different show. It's set in much more, almost, not contemporary times, but much closer to contemporary times. So
Yes.
how did you feel about the material, and did you think that this very different kind of Star Trek show would be a success?
I did think it would be, because I thought, oh, this is taking a slightly different road. I ended up being wrong, but yes, it did. It did take a different tact, and I guess that hurt the show for many of the fans. But I thought the actors again were terrific, and I didn't get to see the whole script. I got to see the episode when it was done, and I thought it worked pretty well. It was the premiere episode, so I thought, well, they'll improve as they go along. How many seasons did it do? Just 1 or 2?
It made it to 4, and I would really say by
4.
the time they hit 4, I mean, they really did hit their stride. It's just at that point, it was unfortunately a little too late.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I didn't realize it was 4. Yes, 4 seasons.
Yeah.
But yes, that first episode did have that kind of different turn. But I thought it was intriguing, and for me, it worked. I thought it worked.
All right, well, your final role in Star Trek Enterprise and final role in Star Trek, as of now at least, was in season 3 and the episode Harbinger, where character doesn't have a name, but he's just credited as a sphere builder test subject. And,
Yes.
I've asked you today a lot about makeup, because you've done so many characters on Trek covered in makeup, but this guy, woof.
This guy, and I always called him the cracked man.
I like that.
I got on the set the first day. I think I was called at 4:30 to be in the makeup chair, and I didn't leave until about 7:45 till 8. So it was a long process. Again, the in painting and getting out of the makeup took almost 3 hours as well, because they had to preserve everything for the next day's shoot. But once I was in it, and the things I got to do were just fabulous. I loved it. I have to say, playing aliens is pretty cool. But it was a very involved makeup process. Yeah. Fortunately, the costume was a little easier to deal with when I had to use the bathroom or whatever. But the makeup itself, and I had to be extremely careful during meal breaks. You have to be so careful. But I was transported. I just loved it. And I love that whole scene when they find me in the pod and bring me into the medical place.
Bay, yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought it was terrific. And Scott Bakula, I thought, made a great captain.
Scott Bakula is a very underrated Star Trek captain. And,
yes.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask, in fact, how'd you like working with him? Because we did see you with him in Broken Bow, but only for a little brief time. But this time around, you get to spend a lot more quality time with him. I think you have a little bit of a fight scene with him too, right?
I do have a little bit of a confrontation, and what was fun was that he said when I was lying on the table and they come and first look at me before they called action, he said, "I know you from somewhere else." He was referring to the Emergence, or not Emergence, the Broken Bow. But he was terrific to work with, and again, I have no real complaints about any of the actors I worked with on any of those shows. I thought the casting was brilliant, and if I had been a regular on one of the shows, maybe I'd have one thing to say about something, but everybody was just wonderful to be with and work with. And the physical work, I love that on Harbinger that I could walk through walls.
Yeah.
And that was a hoot. That was a lot of fun.
And was that like a separate day for you somewhere with a green screen, or how do they do that? Was that still on the same set and they would just do combusting that way in post?
I'd walk up to the wall, they'd freeze me, and then take photos and make sure I had everything accurate. And then they'd go to the other side and set up camera, set up everything. And then I just step through like I had just walked through. And then I guess, green screen to see the melting into the wall.
All right.
And someone once asked me, they said, well, how come you didn't fall through the floor? And I asked the makeup artist, I said, yeah, that's a good question. He said, well, you tell them because you didn't want to.
That's a pretty fair point. Yeah, I'm not going to argue that one. Well, if I fell through the floor, I'd be floating through space. What point would that be then? Yeah, no, that's a good answer. So, throughout your Star Trek history, you played a lot of different aliens. So, who would you say would have been your favorite alien character that you played?
Well, the favorite, for tender-hearted reasons, would have been on Deep Space Nine. But I guess because it was my first one, Mirok. I loved all the characters. I loved each one. And Harbinger, because the makeup was so intense and all-consuming, I have great effect. But Mirok was my first gig. I was thrilled to walk on that set and see all these things I'd just been seeing on the TV screen. That'll stay with me forever.
Well, that's as far as favorite alien, but what about favorite role itself? Because, you've had a myriad of lengths on these different shows. One episode you're there as a train conductor and you're shot and you're done. Others you're there for the whole episode, like in Enterprise or even Voyager. So what would you say was your favorite role to actually perform?
My favorite role? Well, I'd put Mirok up there. Viorsa. Harbinger. Yeah, I guess I would say Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
I loved them all for different reasons, but again, because there was something heartfelt about that part and that scene, I would say on this level, all of them, and then just above it, Deep Space Nine.
DS9 is like that really good oatmeal that just sticks with you forever.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Weird analogy, but it's the truth. DS9 just never goes away, those feelings.
That's true. Yes.
So, Thomas, that's our Star Trek talk. But before we leave here today, I want to jump back into modern times for a second. Can we talk about the catheter cowboy? Because
absolutely.
For those that don't know, that is a series of skits you did with John Oliver on Last Week Tonight that really took off. So much so, it was basically a parody of things that Trump would want to watch on TV in order to be educated about social and political matters. And what's really cool, too, is for folks, again, who don't know, John Oliver actually bought airtime in D.C. to run those things as ads, which is crazy. So, yeah, tell me about being the catheter cowboy. That is fun. That is so fun to watch those skits.
Yeah. The way I got that part, I didn't audition. I got a call from my manager. She said, the John Oliver show would like you to come on and do a infomercial and as the catheter cowboy. Now, apparently there had been some commercials where there was a guy who was the catheter cowboy doing commercials for catheters for people. I didn't know any of this. And I thought, infomercial, I knew who John Oliver was. I knew about the show, but I just thought it sounded strange. And so I said, well, let me think about it. And my wife said, are you nuts? This sounds terrific. And I said, well, I don't know what this means. So I said, okay. And then I went, and lo and behold, it's this wonderfully crazy comedic thing that I ended up doing 5 or 6 of them, I think. But at first I wasn't going to do it. I had no idea what they were talking about. And I thought, I don't know, but I'm glad I didn't say no.
You were like the perfect person for this part. Especially just, to go from the West Wing to this, it's almost, it's like a lateral movement if you want to think about it that way.
Yes, it is. That's true. That's true. And I didn't mind poking our former president. And yeah, I feel very good about doing it. And each time I had no idea what I was going to be saying. I'd get the script literally the day of, and because they kept everything kind of hush hush. And I'd get calls out of the blue saying, hey, can you show up on Saturday to do? And I'd say, sure. So it was a lot of fun, and it was, I think I'm very proud of it.
The catheter cowboy is very much a great example of the fact that it is really the straight man that the comedy comes out of.
Yes.
Everybody talks about, Abbott and Costello, and they always will point to, one character being more funny than the other, but really it's all about the reaction, about playing it straight, because sometimes playing it straight is where the humor actually comes from. And this is like the perfect example of that. You were so amazing at doing that in this role.
Yes, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because they said that to me right away, and I picked up on it right away. And I watched the first one, and I thought, oh, this is the perfect approach. This is the absolute perfect approach to do this. And yeah, being the straight person in a comedy can be quite fun, quite fun.
All right, well, Thomas, let's just lightning round these last few questions I got for you here, and let's start with best gig you ever had and worst gig you ever had.
Well, I can't name directors, and I want to be careful about that. But
yeah, let's make sure you can keep working. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of fun on Armageddon.
Huh.
I'll just leave it at that. But
I didn't ask.
And well, the best gig I'd have to say would be a few of them. First of all, West Wing. In theater, public theater, I did Shakespeare in the Park, Coriolanus. I didn't play Coriolanus, but I was in an outstanding production, Coal Country, and the Star Treks. Every single one of them are dear to my heart. And the one of the Law and Orders I did, which is going back a ways, I really liked that. And I did an episode of Strong Medicine. It wasn't a nice character at all, but I really liked the writing of that character. And he's a bad guy, but I liked the character. I liked playing that part.
Most valuable thing someone has ever told you about life or acting that you still think about today?
Oh, gosh. Be open, be malleable. Remember, you're giving a gift. It isn't about you, it's about, and the person telling me this went like this, reaching out. And that's helped me sometimes, because sometimes the nerves can get to me, and I think, wait a minute, I'm not doing this for me. This isn't for me. This is for those people out there. And that's helped me a lot. And being malleable, because you just don't know what's going to come your way. I mean, the Star Treks, even though they were aliens, they were so different, and you have to just be open and loose, and just be open. Be open.
Great answer. And last thing for today, Thomas, what is the best thing about being a part of the Star Trek universe?
I'm part of a family. The Star Trek universe. I wish, given the hard times we're in right now, I wish that more political leaders would absorb the idea of being part of the community of planet Earth, that we're all neighbors. We all share, we all need air, water, food. These are common things that all of us need. We need our planet. And I always felt that was part of the theme of Star Trek, that the Earthlings represented Earth. And I think I wish that message would get out more.
All right, well, great answer. And great answers throughout this whole interview, Thomas. I mean, it's been a real pleasure to chat with you and really learn about your craft, because you are a master and your explanations for things are so spot on. And just like, a lot of folks will treat acting as this almost pretentious kind of thing. But one of the great things about this show in particular is we get so much access to the inner workings of a mind like yours, and you really break it down in such wonderful ways. So thank you for sharing your stories, sharing your insight, and especially for being a Star Trek fan and just enjoying that experience so much. I always love talking to folks who really, really genuinely enjoy that. And yeah, this has been a real treat for me.
Well, it's been a real treat for me too, Matthew. And I hope I did the thing the way you wanted it. The
intro is all good. Yeah, everybody's already listened to it now, because it's already been 90 minutes ago, and they've been loving every minute of it.
Okay. That's right. I forgot. That's right. Well, it's a pleasure to work with you, buddy, and all the best on this marvelous show you're doing. And yeah, just bless you.
Well, thank you. And since you are a Vulcan, we got to do this, because you got to do this as well. So live long and prosper, Thomas.
Live long and prosper, brother.
That's it for this week's episode of Trek Untold. Until next time, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trek Untold, all one word. If you'd like to directly support this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter over on patreon.com/TrekUntold, which gives you access to some great perks that can't be beat. Or pick up some merchandise from our store, or use my Amazon shop link to check out all kinds of different Star Trek merchandise. Links for all these things are in the show notes. Shout out to Triple Fiction Productions for being a key sponsor of Trek Untold. Don't forget to check them out and all of the fine folks whose ads you've seen or heard on this podcast too. If you have any questions, feedback, or comments for the show, or would like to suggest a guest or discuss sponsorship options for any of these episodes in the future, send me a message at trekuntold@gmail.com. I hope to see you here again as we uncover more untold stories from Star Trek and beyond, and get to know even more amazing people who have contributed to this ever-expanding universe. Until next time, I'm Matthew Kaplowitz, and remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold is sponsored by TrekSphere.com, promoting fan-produced Star Trek content in all forms, is powered by the RageWorks podcasting network, and is affiliated with Nerd News Today.